Now I know it's a style choice, but I still can't shake the feeling you're the victim of a kid with a Dremel tool. Mega Man X is getting so much toy love lately, and you will not see me complaining at the least. This also gives me a chance to explore some new toy lines I've never delved into before, such as NXEDGE, very stylized 4-inch, slightly chibi-fied toy line, full of all kinds of robots, and including my favorite blue bomber. So, let's take a look and see what this toy line is like for anyone who has never experienced it before. For starters, as noted, he is very tiny and svelte in size. Well, not svelte, he's quite bulky, but only 4 inches tall, so it's a nice desktop size. You'll also notice right off the bat, extremely stylized. This isn't like the True Force design where they radically redesigned how Mega Man X looks and just kind of kept the overall appearance the same. No, he definitely has the look of Mega Man X. All the colors and shapes are in the right spots, but his body is completely covered in these grooves. It gives him a much more mechanical look, like his armor is made of multiple components that can shift and move a little bit. Doesn't, it's not as smooth looking as it typically is, which I kind of find a little bit more to my liking than the True Force design. That took me a little bit of time to get used to. This feels more like I don't know, more like how they modernize superheroes, where they keep this, for movies and such, where they keep the overall look there, but they give it all kinds of new details and lines to make it more complex and more visually dynamic. Kind of into that. So just as a comparison real quick, I'll show you the Tamashii Buddy, which is about the same size, similar aesthetic. So yeah, you can definitely tell not all that different, but different enough to stand on its own and have its unique style apparent. So it's a little bit of a departure, but not a drastic one. This is a nice, kind of dip your toe in the water type thing. So as you can see, he is cast in the traditional shades of blue and light blue plastic with a bunch of paint added in. There's a bunch of black plastic too for joints and little details like the barrel and such. And then we get to the face with a lot of tan paint in order to create his traditional look. No alternate faces are in this thing. You get more of a standard, kind of battle, kind of pose, kind of look, very serious X. A little bit of translucent plastic for the gem, and you can see a very, very faint X there in the center. If you've played Mega Man X4, that genuinely makes me curious what the letter inside Zero's crystal is going to be when that one comes out. I guess we'll find out together. You can find more translucent plastic inset inside the helmet, as well as a little bit more metallic red there on the bottom. Now, you can't find it in the barrel, unfortunately. That's one of the places I normally expect that detail. Missing here for good reason. Okay, so what do you get for the size? Well, aside from an interesting colorization or an interesting sculpting approach, one thing about these toys is their range of articulation, and they kind of go out of their way to make sure you have a very wide range of articulation, even in areas that don't normally have it. For instance, the head bends down farther than I've ever seen a character's head bend. It gives him a lot more posing options. He even looks a little bit more natural laying flat if you want a defeated pose. It gives him a lot more posing options I normally expect out of a figure, so that part's good. Goes all the way around as well, so plenty of head articulation. I wish it went up a little bit more than it does. Could use a hinge there. Now the torso, you can see a hinge joint going back and forth there, so his arm has tons of room. You can see the joints are extremely exposed on this toy. That's the whole point of NXEDGE, from what I've gathered, is that all the joints have these ridiculous ranges where they've cut out a lot of the actual components of the figure in order to give the joints as much breathing room as possible. So you have these shoulder parts that can go backwards and forwards quite a bit, and that's before you even get into the standard universal jointing. And the jointing is good enough to where you can actually extend the arm all the way out and not affect the shoulder armor. Now, I have had these pop off on me because they're just kind of friction pegged into the hinge. but they pop right back on, so it's not a big deal. And then you get typical stuff, bicep swivel. You get an elbow joint that works very well, in spite of only having one joint to it. Wrist rotates, of course. You have that. The joint that's weird to me is as we get down, well, for starters, you can find a torso joint that's hidden away in there so he can rotate and rock. Mine likes to bend to the right a little bit, which is frustrating. And then you get another one down there at the waist to rotate around with. And then there's the hips. This is the weird one for me. Look how far out the hips are from the pelvis. That's a really strange. He looks disjointed here, and this is where the aesthetic fails me. And I can see on, you know, I know they do big mech suit designs more often than not, and I can see where that would work a little bit better. Here, where he's supposed to have a much more human, much more sleek appearance, this is a little bit jarring, but I can't deny results. It does have a great range of motion. And interestingly enough, the ball joint is cut in a way I don't normally expect. It's actually cut to the front, which normally you'd expect ball joints to be cut, you know, to the sides and going into the pelvis. Here it's going forward, but it works. It has rotation, it has a full range of motion, and the outward motion works too. It's extremely well cut ball joint that gives a lot of motion range. That's exceptionally well done. So it looks a little bit strange, but it works. It just works. And then you get the knee joint, works really good. And then at the ankle, you have rotation, you have a full ball joint, you have all the motion you want. He's an exceptionally posable little guy. And it's Mega Man. Oh, sorry. It is Mega Man X. So those big feet means lots of balance in his posing. So he does pretty well as far as being a little articulate figure for you to goof around with when you just need something to do with your hands at your desk. So, beyond that, what do you get? It's a Japanese figure. It comes with a whole bunch of parts, right? Well, maybe not so much. Maybe not the ones you expect. Like I said, no extra face parts, and hand-wise, you only get one. A splayed-open left hand. His right hand is in permanent X-Buster mode, so don't expect any kind of dual-handing poses here. Not what this toy does. What this toy does is effect parts. So first off, you have the one that's been coming up a lot more often lately, a dash effect. So you can actually have him in mid-dash, which it's always a little bit strange because even the level of articulation this toy is capable of still can't really replicate, he still can't really replicate the pose he makes when he dashes. So you got to come up with your best approximation. And then you get blast effects, and these are pretty typical. If you've seen Bandai's X figures and Figuarts and D-Arts lines, then you pretty much know what to expect here. You get the burst of 3 shots, which aren't in a line, so it's not exactly accurate to how the game works. The joint on the shoulder is tight enough to where he can support that without any assistance, so that works. So you have a very good blast function. And then you have the other one you normally get, which is a big charged shot. Once again, this plugs in. This is why there's no crystal inside his X-Buster. This one, on the other hand, though, is extremely heavy. You're not going to get the figure to support that. Luckily, there is a little peg hole there, right there at the bottom, so we can support this with a display stand. And normally I skip display stands, because as long as you know they come with a figure, that's fine. But this one is a little bit different than your standards, so I wanted to show it off just a little bit. For starters, the base itself is in a triangular pattern, or, well, I guess a 6-sided pattern if you want to be technical about it. But the idea here is all these have interlocking sections, 3 and then 3. So all of these stands from different toy lines or different figures from NXEDGE can piece together. You also notice a ton of holes in it, so lots of positioning for whatever poses you want to do. The interesting thing is the arms it comes with. Now, for starters, you get the standard kind. You get these, which have your typical hinges at the top and the bottom, and then a sideways hinge in the middle, so you have plenty of room for motion as well as getting all those little nuances you want in your posing. Those are good. Then there's this little interesting rod, which doesn't have any hinging to it, even though it's got pegs on both sides. No, for this, you actually kind of have to wiggle the piece off like so, and then reposition. It's 8-sided, so 8 positions. Well, I guess technically 5 the way this is shaped. But that means you have one that's stiff. It doesn't have any kind of worries about, friction in these hinges wearing out, and they should be able to support weight a lot better. So that's actually pretty clever. That solves a few problems I have with, your typical display stands. And then there's the ones I wasn't expecting, which were these really long ones, and these you get 3 of, which I couldn't figure out at first until it kind of dawned on me. This is for making entire dioramas or displays with your NXEDGE figures. And if they came out with a whole bunch of Mega Man figures, I could totally see me doing this. So that's just to kind of make your own hall of armor out of them, I guess, should you want to combine so many together into one big display. And you can see, you can make multiple layers, you can extend it out as far back or forward as you want. It's an interesting little system. So that's actually kind of interesting to me. I never saw a display stand that had that many things that it could do. So if you're wondering where cost goes, that's part of it. The only thing is you do need a little display hook in order to actually connect Mega Man X to it, and it's not in the best of positions where you have to plug it in. That's all I'm going to say. So there you have NXEDGE Mega Man X, or Rockman X as the box says. It's a very, very nice figure. Aesthetically, it's not going to be for everybody, because you're not getting the traditional super smooth Mega Man look, but it's an interesting, different take on the character's design without going too far. And proportionally, outside of those weird hips, I kind of like the overall shape and style of him. He almost looks like the SNES sprite came off off the game and made a figure. It's got that exact same kind of proportions that those sprites in the game had. So that's where it kind of wins me over. And of course, look at how much you get with this thing. For such a small little package, that's quite a bit. So this was a fun little delve into the line for the first time. Definitely picking up Zero. And I'm sure there's plenty more Mega Man X's coming out. I don't know why. Maybe just because he's in Marvel vs. Capcom now. I don't know. Star Power's back on the rise. I don't know. Might be nice to get, a new game, but, I'm not complaining or anything.